Welcome to day 131. We have 2 Samuel 19 to 20, Psalm 55, and Matthew 28. We've got Joab talking to David, and he asks him, "Do you love those who hate you? And how are you treating those who love you?" These are tough questions, and there's some echoes of Jesus here of loving our enemies. So we've got David returning as the king of Judah now. He replaces Joab as his commander, and he is given advice to kill the people who had turned against David. And David says, "No killing today." So here is something for us to think about. When we have conflict in our lives, what do we do after the conflict? How do we treat people? How do we reconcile? How do we start building community again? These are hard questions. And in the last generation, we have seen how countries have tried to deal with the time after conflict in different ways. South Africa had the Truth and Reconciliation process where people were not necessarily punished, but there were hearings to make sure that the truth of everything that had happened during the time of apartheid came out, and that as many people who disappeared and were killed and were missing from the time of conflict, their stories were told, and they tried to figure out what happened to them so people would have closure. Other countries have gone to a lot of retribution, have put a lot of people in prison, have even killed people after a conflict is done. So, this is something we're still struggling with in our world today. Even within families and friendships, what do we do after conflict? Now, the saga continues. We've got treachery, we've got loyalty, we've got battles. We've got a woman who saves the city with negotiation and teamwork by leaders of the city. What can we do in tough times? Can we bring people together to save a community? We be inspired by this story? In Psalm 55, there's a prayer to God. Please listen, God, deliver me. Now, it's unusual to find sanctuary in the wilderness instead of the temple. Most Psalms turn to the temple for the sanctuary. But here we've got a tragedy where friends have become enemies. So this gives us a little window that there isn't just one place that we can go to connect with God, to feel God's presence, and to feel safety in God. Matthew 28, we're wrapping up our gospel. Mary and Martha did not stay all night at the tomb. They return after the Sabbath on Sunday morning. An angel shows up. The guards are frightened. The angel sends the women to go tell the disciples that Jesus is raised from the dead and that Jesus will meet them in Galilee. And the women go and do this faithfully. Now, one of the things that Christian churches today are still struggling with is what is the role of women in ministry in the church today? We have a fair number of Christian traditions now that give women equal position within the church. They can be pastors, they can be leaders, they can serve on church councils. But the majority of Christian traditions around the world, most notably the Roman Catholic Church, most evangelical or non denominational churches, many Lutheran churches, especially the Missouri and Wisconsin Synod traditions, still set women aside and do not give them the same role for pastoral ministry or leadership as elders, deacons, council members in their churches. I bring this up because of this story of Mary and Martha being sent to tell what happened. So, in this telling of Easter morning, Mary and Martha are the first people to preach the good news, to tell people that Jesus is alive, that Jesus is not dead. Does that make them preachers? Angel tells them to tell others. Weigh this against the verses that seem to limit women as leaders. Now, it doesn't seem that this gets brought up as often as the verses that reduce the space and the authority of women as leaders in the church. But I think we need to be thinking about this. The angel tells them to go and do this. As we read through Paul, we're going to see that Paul refers to many women as leaders who are doing the work of apostles, which then we have to hold against the times when there are verses attributed to Paul that limit women's role. So there is still a lot of interpretation, a lot of wrestling to do with the text, but I just lift this up as one place where we see that women are taking a position of leadership, a position of preaching. Now, the Roman guards split, and some go to tell the religious leaders what has happened. The guards are bribed by the religious leaders to say that the body was stolen. So, this shows that the religious leaders are not entirely acting with integrity and ethics. The disciples listen to the women and they head to Galilee. They leave Jerusalem. They have mixed feelings when they find Jesus. Some worship, some are hesitating. Thomas isn't the only one who has doubts of what's going on. Jesus then finishes Matthew's gospel by giving them a job. It's often referred to as the Great Commission. You've got a job to go to make disciples, to train people to follow Jesus as Jesus has trained them, baptize people, and Jesus promises to be with them. Now, the question for us to consider is how committed are we to this task? Who have we talked to about the good news of Jesus? Who have we trained? Who have we sent out? How are we spreading God's grace and love and forgiveness? Um, Sometimes it's just easy to think, well, that's the job of missionaries, that's someone else's job. But Jesus doesn't place limitations on who is to be doing this. Jesus wants all of us to be sharing the joy and the happiness of the grace and the forgiveness and the salvation and the joy and the love that God, through Jesus, is giving to everyone. Every person is open and available to receive this gift from Jesus. And so Jesus wants all of us to be sharing this with all the people in our lives in such a way that is useful, that is relevant. We're not supposed to go bang people over the heads, and we certainly don't want to go back to the time where we were converting at the end of a gun or the end of a sword, requiring everyone to do it. We want people to make a free choice to want Jesus in their lives. But how we live our lives, how we talk about our faith, can have a big influence as to who hears the message of Jesus and who accepts the message of Jesus. So let's spread a little bit more joy and peace and love in the world and tell a few more people about what Jesus has done for us today. We'll see you next time.